She wasn't supposed to be there. No uniform, no orders, no salute, just a cleaning badge clipped to her belt. And a sniper rifle she wasn't cleared to touch. At the range, 2 elite operators traded smirks. One chuckled. The other pulled out a crisp stack of bills. 5 grand says she can't even find the trigger. Then someone pointed to a candle barely visible. See 500 meters away. 1 shot, no spotter. No second chances. And when she pulled the trigger, every voice on base vanished mid-sentence. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city below. And if stories like this strike a chord, hit subscribe. Because these real, powerful military moments deserve to be remembered. The Arizona heat danced above the baked concrete at Fort Granite Sniper Range, where Viper Unit gathered for another brutal morning of long-range drills. Delta's finest, known for precision, silence, and zero tolerance for nonsense, moved in seamless rhythm. Master Gunnery Sergeant Thatcher Cole crouched near the bench, tuning the scope on his precision rifle with the kind of intensity that could crack glass. His face, weathered by decades of combat, gave away nothing. A few feet over, Senior Master Sergeant Reed Morgan dragged a cloth through his barrel with muscle memory, smirking to himself as he mumbled something sarcastic about command's obsession with a perfect conditions or bust. "Vehicle approaching," came the dry call from Specialist Mina Shaw, the unit's lone female marksman, her gaze fixed on a rising dust plume coming in fast along the outer road. Inside the small control bunker, Colonel Bryson Kestrel stepped out into the glare. His posture, rigid and wary, didn't soften as a black sedan crawled to a stop on the gravel lot. This wasn't part of today's rotation, and Viper didn't do well with surprises. The passenger door opened. What stepped out looked nothing like the battlefield regulars. Brielle Carter stood barely over 5'5", her clothes practical but loose, her frame lean, her graying hair tied back hastily whipped in the breeze. But what caught the unit's attention wasn't her size. It was the noticeable shake in her hands as she signed the security log. "Someone order a data analyst?" Cole muttered under his breath, just loud enough for the squad to snicker. Kestrel met her halfway. His body stiff, expression unreadable. No greeting. No warm welcome. Just a few clipped words, then a curt nod toward the far end of the range. "All right, eyes up," he called. "DARPA sent her. She's not to be questioned. She's not here for evaluations. No ranks, no salutes, no bios." Without flinching, Brielle carried an old, dented rifle case to the nearest open lane. She set it down, opened it methodically, no small talk, no wasted motion, and began assembling a weapon none of them recognized. When she clicked open the case, Reed Morgan sauntered over, half curious, half dismissive. His eyes scanned the unfamiliar weapon lying within, sleek, dark, and nothing like their standard kits. At first, his interest was genuine, but as he watched her hands shake while locking in the barrel, the corner of his mouth tugged upward. "Want some help with that, miss?" he asked, a knowing smirk wrapped in fake politeness. "I've got it, thanks," Brielle Carter replied softly. Her voice was gentle, but carried an edge of wear, foreign-sounding but dulled by time. As she attached the scope, her fingers slipped. A tool tumbled, clinking against the hard floor. A few nearby soldiers chuckled, not mean, just dismissive. But Specialist Mina Shaw didn't join in. She observed more closely. When Brielle's sleeve shifted as she reached again, Mina caught something, a thin, ragged scar trailing down her forearm. The kind of wound earned in places no civilian ever goes. "Never seen a rifle like that before," Thatcher Cole commented, his tone more curious than mocking. "That's because it's not for sale," Brielle answered simply, never looking up. Her hands still trembled, but there was precision in her movements, deliberate and rehearsed. It wasn't clumsiness. It was something deeper, older. Muscle memory fighting the body. Reed pulled a crumpled bill from his pocket, flattened it out, and slapped it on the table beside her gear. "Thousand says she can't even keep that thing still," he announced loudly, inviting attention from across the range. One by one, operators paused. Heads turned. The squad formed a quiet arc behind her station. Not one stepped forward. No encouragement. No offer of support. That wasn't the culture here. From a shaded overlook, Colonel Kestrel watched, arms folded, eyes narrow. He said nothing. "Let's give her something real," Cole said into his comms. Team 2 placed the mark. Binoculars tracked shadows shifting across the far ridge. Then a tiny glint caught the light, a target barely visible in the haze. The rangefinder beeped. 2575 meters. "Light it," Cole instructed. A soft flicker appeared, orange, faint. A single candle flame dancing in the desert wind. "One shot," Reed said, grinning. "Put it out," But don't touch the wax. Laughter bubbled up behind him. A shot like that? Out of reach for even their best. Brielle didn't speak. She tuned her optic, adjusted dials, then pulled out a compact silver module from her kit. It snapped onto the rail with a quiet click. Despite her shaking, every move was measured. The noise faded. The mood shifted. Her breath slowed. Her hands moved in calculated rhythm, less like a woman fighting her nerves, more like someone returning to something buried. Mina stepped closer. The way Brielle prepped, it was familiar. Not recent, not modern. Something. Lost, classified. She's stalling, someone muttered behind them. But his tone had changed, less mocking, more uncertain. Even Reed frowned now, unsettled by the silence. The air itself felt heavier. Focus had replaced amusement. Kestrel moved in without a word. His posture changed too, less indifference, more assessment. Brielle narrowed her eyes. Wind northwest. Crosswind drift 8mm S, ambient 90 C2 degree. F humidity 15%. Pressure stable. She ran through variables like a machine, fast, clean. Then came the final inputs, the Coriolis adjustment. Over short distances, irrelevant. At this range, crucial. The module attached to her rifle emitted a soft hum. Inside, it read her micro tremors, compensating with internal gyros and real-time calibration. This wasn't luck. This was math. This was innovation. Through her scope, the flame danced, not from the heat, but from the echo of her own nerves. Another image flashed in her mind. Kingfisher. A bomb tech through a window, 800 meters. 2 civilians between. No time, no margin, just precision. She'd made the shot. Then came Robert, the op that changed everything. That started the shaking, and never let go. She blinked it away. Reed leaned toward Cole. Seriously, this is getting awkward. Call it? Cole didn't answer immediately. His voice came quiet. Let her finish. Mina's brow furrowed. That scar, that posture. Her memory scratched. She'd seen that exact scar before, in a photo she wasn't supposed to view. The file wasn't civilian. Wasn't military either. It was black. And it was locked for a reason. Brielle Carter exhaled steadily, eyes locked through the scope. Her finger hovered just over the trigger, light, trained, exact. The tremors were still there, faint pulses traveling down her forearm, but the compact unit fixed to her rifle compensated in real-time, tiny gyro adjustments, smoothing out her aim with silent precision. She squeezed. The sound was soft, barely louder than a sigh. The bullet cut across the searing Arizona landscape, invisible but deadly. 7 full seconds of breathless stillness. Viper unit remained glued to their optics. On the distant ridge, the tiny flame quivered, then vanished. Clean, no movement of the candle itself. No collapse, just gone. The silence on the range deepened. Thatcher Cole pulled down his binoculars slowly, as if questioning what he'd seen. Reed Morgan stood frozen, lips parted, but no sound came out. Even Colonel Kestrel blinked, once, his stance shifting in a way that wasn't quite shock, but wasn't far from admiration. That was... Reed started, voice barely audible. Unreal, Cole finished, eyes still on the flickering haze where the flame had been. Mina Shaw moved toward Brielle, her expression no longer skeptical. She reached out gently, brushing up the sleeve of Brielle's jacket. There, along the forearm, was a signature mark, a scar etched with data, unrecognizable to most. But Mina knew. She had clearance, barely. Your Nightshade, she breathed. The name wasn't rank, it was legend. Kestrel stepped forward, dropping any remaining pretense of distance or formality. Team, meet Lieutenant Colonel Brielle Carter, he said, voice carrying across the silent squad. 20 years in Black Ops. 37 long-range kills past the 2-kilometer mark. Awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for actions that remain redacted to this day. No one interrupted. The weight of his words pressed into the ground around them. 3 years back, Kestrel went on. She took part in a mission overseas, codename Rabbit. A bioagent was deployed. She neutralized the target. Saved lives. But the agent triggered lasting neurological effects. His gaze swept across the team. And what you've been mocking is the price of that mission. Reed lowered his head. The crumpled $1,000 bill still rested beside him. With a quiet breath, he picked it up, walked to Brielle, and pressed it into her palm. Then he straightened and saluted. No commands were issued. No speech is needed. One by one, each operator followed. A quiet line. A single gesture of respect. Nothing flashy, just a recognition of who she truly was. Colonel Kestrel turned back toward her. "Lieutenant Colonel," he said, the title landing like a medal. "I'd appreciate your insight, particularly regarding field viability of the system." Brielle began stowing her gear, her hands still unsteady, but now filled with control. Mina stayed by her side. "That unit," she asked, nodding toward the mount. "It corrects tremors?" Brielle gave a quiet nod. "And adapts the longer it runs. It learns with me. Today was the final live test." "You could have told us who you were," Mina murmured. "Would have saved you all this." Brielle glanced at her. The smile she gave was faint but unshaken. "And if I had, what would it have proven?" She didn't wait for an answer. "This tech doesn't work because I'm special," she said, voice soft and steady. "It works because it must." "It works," Brielle Carter said quietly, her eyes still on the horizon where the flame had vanished without a trace. "Because it solves the one problem no one else thought needed solving." The candle stood untouched, upright, silent. Only the fire was gone. Sometimes the loudest way to prove yourself is to say nothing at all. Mina Shaw stood beside her, looking not at the target but at Brielle. There was a shift in her eyes, less skepticism now, more weight, understanding. "You needed real doubt," Mina said slowly, "so the results would mean something." Brielle snapped the case shut. "Certainty is comfortable. Doubt forces clarity." She turned and followed Colonel Kestrel back toward the control station, her steps steady now, deliberate. The rest of Viper unit stayed by the bench, unusually still. Where mockery had lived moments ago, reflection now hung in the air like dust after a detonation. Reed Morgan flexed his hands, watching them. The slight quiver hadn't left, but something else had. Thatcher Cole caught the movement. "What are you thinking?" he asked quietly. Reed didn't look up. "Not sure yet," he muttered, "but I'm getting there." 3 months later, Fort Granite was almost unrecognizable. The dusty utilitarian range had been transformed. New shooting lanes, each one equipped with adaptive stabilization systems, the kind first tested in silence, with a borrowed rifle and a flickering flame. Developed from Carter's prototype, the tech now had a name, Project Whisperline. Viper unit had become the pilot team, and the numbers didn't lie. Marksmen previously sidelined by mission, fatigue or trauma-induced instability were reclaiming their edge. Soldiers once haunted by minor shakes were landing precision shots like clockwork. And at the center of it, surprisingly, was Reed Morgan. He was no longer skeptical. He was helping build it. The secret he carried for years, out. 17 years in the field. Hundreds of missions. Then one day, the tremor showed up, quiet, inconvenient, persistent. He buried it. Called it stress. Ignored it. "I should have seen what you were doing," he told Brielle, adjusting the grip tension on one of the prototypes. "I was too proud to admit I was the guy who needed it." She didn't stop working, just nodded slightly as she tuned a calibration node. "Pride gets us through doors," she replied. "But it can lock them too." Across the range, Colonel Kestrel stood reviewing data with Specialist Mina Shaw, now permanently reassigned to oversee the program's deployment. He tapped a highlighted section on the tablet, a 42% precision. Improvement under high-stress tremor conditions. "They're watching," Kestrel said. This got Pentagon attention. Mina raised an eyebrow. "What finally changed their minds?" 3 months back, no one would have looked twice. "Results speak louder than doubts," said Kestrel, calmly watching as Sergeant First Class Thatcher. Cole fired 3 dead-on shots at 2,200 meters. Even while his hands quivered from the high-dose caffeine trial, he'd taken to deliberately challenge the stabilizers. That same evening, Zarina caught sight of Brielle Carter, isolated at the farthest edge of the range, fine-tuning the very system she'd personally built from the ground up. "You recognized me from day one," Brielle said softly, her focus locked through the scope. "There was no guessing," Zarina answered. "I reviewed your dossier after the Rabbit incident. It wasn't public. I had to dig for it. You never confronted me." "It wasn't my place," Zarina replied, pausing before she asked, "But why stay quiet? You could have sidestepped all that backlash." Brielle rested her tool on the bench. Her fingers, ever so slightly, began to tremble. "Trust doesn't come from reputation. It comes from proof." She nodded toward the line of soldiers now striking targets they used to miss. "I didn't show up to clear my name. I showed up so warriors like me could earn their shot back." 7 days later, Beneath the solemn hush of the memorial wall at Fort Arcadian, a private gathering took place. Echo Squadron stood straight, as Brielle's custom targeting system was officially approved and issued. General Silas Wren flew in personally, delivering a brief but moving address on redemption and evolution in service. After the formation dispersed, Thatcher Cole approached Brielle, something folded tight in his calloused hand. "I never apologized," he said, voice lower than usual but genuine, "for how I treated you when you arrived." "It's all right," Brielle said, her tone forgiving. He gently opened a creased photo. Younger days. Him standing next to a stern-eyed man in uniform. "My brother Logan Thatcher, Force Recon, took his own life after a spinal injury pulled him out for good." His voice was low, uneven. He didn't need sympathy. He needed someone who knew that a detour isn't defeat, it's just a different map. Brielle Carter took the worn photograph in her hands, eyes scanning the two faces caught in a moment of pride and stillness. She studied it for a few seconds, then handed it back with care. "What was his ideal range?" she asked. 800 meters, Thatcher Cole said. "He always said it was where your gut meets your math." "Bring the rifle tomorrow," Brielle replied. "Let's see how it handles with the new stabilization unit." That night, inside her dim quarters, Brielle combed through diagnostics and sensor readouts. But her focus kept drifting back to Thatcher. How, for the first time, the weight in his voice had cracked just enough to let something lighter in. Her hands trembled again, the old damage reminding her why the mission mattered more than ever. A knock pulled her back. Colonel Kestrel stood at the door, a folder tucked under his arm. "They called," he said flatly. "Pentagon. They're moving forward, hard." "That fast?" Brielle asked, stepping aside to let him in. "They want you leading development, but not from here. They're offering a post in Virginia. Research base, full resources. Echo keeps testing, but you'd be working remote." Brielle frowned. "That's a problem. We're still tuning in real time. I can't design blind." "I said the same," Kestrel replied, placing the folder in her hands. "So they sent a compromise." She opened it, a reassignment order, but not for her. For Echo Squadron. A 3-month stationing at the Virginia site, high-priority testing phase, full integration. "The entire unit?" she asked. "They're thinking bigger now," Kestrel nodded. "Joint ops. Long-term injuries. Multi-branch rollout. This isn't just Delta anymore. This is doctrine level." Brielle glanced down at the paperwork. "When?" 3 days, and there's more." He reached into his pocket, producing a smaller envelope. This came direct from the secretary. Inside, a formal offer to lead adaptive warfare development across U.S. Special Operations, a command role. Not frontline, but still leading the charge. The very thing that ended her operational career had opened another door entirely. "I'll need time to weigh it," Brielle said, her voice even but distant. "Of course," Kestrel said. "But if it matters, I've watched a lot of soldiers resist change. Yours didn't. They followed you, whether they realized it or not." When he left, Brielle sat in silence. Pages and numbers scattered across her desk. That first shot 3 months ago hadn't just dropped a candle. It had lit a fuse. The next morning she arrived early, but not before Thatcher. He stood near the bench, a weathered gun case at his feet. "Logan's," he said quietly, opening it to reveal a mint-condition M40A5, old but flawless. Together they mounted her system onto the classic sniper rifle. The tech adjusted to the rifle's weight and recoil profile within seconds. As Thatcher lifted it to his shoulder, his face was unreadable until you looked closer, a man carrying pain, memory, and purpose in the same breath. "I haven't touched this since the funeral," he said. "Couldn't bring myself to." "You're not just shooting today," Brielle said gently. "You're picking up where he left off." They aligned at the 800-meter mark, Logan's benchmark. Nothing fancy, just a simple metal plate. Thatcher set his feet, drew in a long breath, then in rhythm fired 3 times. Clean, tight, dead center. When he lowered the weapon, he didn't speak. He just stared forward for a long while, then turned to Brielle. "Thank you," he said softly, like the weight of it had been waiting years to fall. News of the Virginia deployment traveled fast through Echo Squadron. For many, it meant progress, an inside view of tech that could rewrite how elite forces operate. But for Reed Morgan, it struck deeper. As Brielle Carter calibrated the latest interface patch to sync with the subtle tremor in Reed's dominant hand, he finally broke the silence. "What happens when this thing goes live?" "After testing?" Brielle looked up, immediately recognizing what he was really asking. It doesn't erase the injury, she said, but it gives you enough control to meet mission readiness. That's the standard that counts. Reed exhaled slowly, his shoulders relaxing for the first time in days. So that means I stay in uniform? That's exactly why this exists, Brielle replied. For guys like you. For anyone who still has the fight, but needs help getting back into it. Just 48 hours before Wheels Up, Brielle got an unexpected knock. Specialist Zarina stood in the doorway, tablet in hand, her expression unreadable. We've got something you need to look at, she said, tapping a thumb to unlock the secure feed. The screen lit up with grainy thermal footage, dark silhouettes, moving through an isolated facility in North Africa. Each figure carried containers shaped too precisely to be random. Brielle leaned closer, pulse climbing. That's them, she said sharply. The same unit from Rabat, the ones behind the nerve compound. Zarina nodded. Intel confirms they've evolved the agent. Refined it, maybe even built for broad deployment. Brielle's stomach turned. The images flooded her mind again. The collapse. The hospital, the moment her hands first betrayed her. Why are you bringing this to me? She asked, already sensing the answer. Because no one understands this crew's tactics like you do. And no one else has faced what you have, Zarina said. That makes you the best person to lead this from the ops center. I'm not cleared for field work, Brielle said, lifting trembling fingers. Not even with the stabilizers. You wouldn't be boots on ground, Zarina clarified. They want you at the TOC, coordinating the playbook. This is about command, not combat. The footage kept rolling, figures fading in and out of view, shifting patterns. It was familiar and haunting. Years of service had ended in a single breath of poisoned air. Now she had a chance to confront it on her own terms. This op kicks off tomorrow? She asked. Zarina nodded. It'll delay the Virginia transfer by a few days. Kestrel's already greenlit it. The final call's yours. But Echo's been requested by name. This came from high. Brielle stood there for a beat, then answered. Tell the squad to gear up. I want the full brief and tactical map ready within 3 hours. I'll lead it from the talk. Once Zarina left, Brielle stood at her window, watching the team move across the range. They weren't just running exercises anymore, they were syncing, covering angles, flowing together with a purpose only hard lessons could teach. These weren't test subjects. They were warriors. They were her responsibility now. This wasn't about redemption anymore. It was about stopping something that had already ended one. Life, hers, and could destroy. Many more if left unchecked. Her tremors would never fade. The injury would never heal. But she didn't need steady hands to guide a mission. She needed clarity and purpose. She had both. Inside the TOC, monitors lit the dark room like a war room of the future. The North African site glowed with movement, human shapes, shifting in infrared and heat wave. A dozen hostiles, formations taking shape. Echo was already in position. This wasn't just a test of tech or tactics. It was a test of whether the broken could still lead. Whether second chances could shape something better, not by reclaiming the past, but by securing the future. Brielle Carter stood behind the ops table in the tactical control center, her fingers resting lightly on the edge. Though she wasn't going into the field, she wore her fatigues, old habits from years of mission, briefings and tactical coordination. Our target is Dr. Nassar Idrim, she said, bringing up a heat signature still of the man on the central screen. Former lead chemist for Syrian defense. R&D. He disappeared 3 years ago after heading a black site project in Al-Zufra focused on non-lethal, neural agents, designed to disable without killing. That the same compound that hit you? Reed Morgan asked, voice low but direct. Brielle nodded, measured and calm. Yes, and based on recent intel intercepts, they've refined it. This version could be aerosolized and spread without triggering conventional detection. If deployed, it could incapacitate entire squads in under 5 minutes. Colonel Kestrel stepped beside her, arms crossed. Your mission's straightforward. Secure all lab materials, capture or neutralize Nassar, and exfil with minimal engagement. And if it's not minimal? Thatcher Cole asked, his tone even, but every bit on edge. Brielle opened a black case on the table, revealing upgraded gear. Then you'll be going in with these new filtration masks and adaptive control modules, calibrated to Nassar's signature compound. They're rated for airborne particle rejection down to 0.5 micron. Zarina studied the schematic pinned beneath the case lid. Extraction? Eastern tree line, 1.8 clicks from the target zone. Brielle replied, pointing to the marked zone. Once the compound's locked down, you'll have a 20-minute window to reach the bird. The team moved to gear up. But before Brielle turned back to her console, Kestrel caught her arm. "You ready for this?" he asked in a low voice. "You've got skin in this game? That complicates command." Her fingers flexed slightly, subtle tremor sharper than usual. "No one knows his tactics better than I do," she said. "And this squad's tight. They don't need babysitting." Kestrel gave a tight nod. "Then Toxi's yours." By Zo 200 hours, Echo Squadron launched under low clouds and near-silent skies. Brielle, inside the tuck, monitored the feed, live thermal, vitals, movement tracking. Her eyes moved from screen to screen without pause. "Alpha 1 in position," Reed's voice came through the comms. "Perimeter clear." "Proceed," Brielle responded, her tone steady. Her left hand, resting near the console, trembled, but her focus never wavered. "Nassar is a high-value asset. Capture if possible." Everything moved smoothly until they hit the primary lab building. Brielle narrowed her eyes at the readings. 15 active heat spots, Thatcher whispered. "That doesn't match the intel. Too many bodies." "Hold," Brielle said, studying the thermal readouts. "Their movement's too uniform." "That's not right." Zarina deployed a micro-drone through a ceiling vent. On screen, the image came into focus. Not people, heat decoys. Insulated pads placed in body-sized groupings. A trap. "It's misdirection," Brielle snapped. "He's playing chess. Shift to the north building, structure 3, low thermal red." "Too quiet." "That's where he is." Echo moved fast and silent. Within minutes, they breached the north facility. 2 live thermal signatures. Inside, a bare room, a chilled rig terminal, and Nassar Idrim sitting alone behind a desk. He was older than his last image. More sunken but alert, watching. "Took longer than I expected," he said, voice smooth. "Still, sooner than I'd hoped." "Where's the formula?" Reed asked, weapon steady. Nassar didn't blink. "Oh, it's around," he murmured. "In fact, you've been breathing it since you walked in." 3 minutes in, the central nervous system starts to seize. The footage showed it clearly, diminishing reflexes, balance issues across the team. The exact progression that ended her own deployment years ago. Still, the squad kept pushing forward. Even while restraining Khalil and executing fallback, their movements were deliberate, controlled. That muscle memory carved from experience and grit. "You're wasting resources," Khalil said as Thatcher Cole guided him toward the corridor. "There's no reversal." She knows that. Thatcher's grip locked tighter. She also knows how to survive. "That's more than you ever figured out." The exfil wasn't clean. By the time the evac bird arrived, even Reed, always composed, had to steady his rifle with effort. From the ops center, Brielle followed every readout. Pulse, oxygen saturation, toxin load, all rising. Her hands trembled, but her focus never wavered. As the chopper cleared the danger zone, she turned to Kestrel. "I need full access to Arcadian's biomedical labs, and unlock every prototype file we've got." Kestrel didn't question her. "You think you can adapt the neural tech in time?" "I will adapt it," Brielle said. There's no other option. 3 days later, Echo Squadron remained isolated in Fort Arcadian's quarantine wing. Symptoms had fully developed. Shaky coordination, delayed motor response, impaired balance. All of it devastatingly familiar to Brielle. She didn't leave the lab. Between diagnostics and recalibration trials, she visited the ward constantly, pushing her neural interface beyond its limits, redefining its use case. Meanwhile, Khalil, under maximum lockdown, had started cooperating, not out of guilt, but obsession. "I've studied tech for decades," he told her during one session. "But what you've built, turning a weakness into a weapon? That's rare." Brielle stared him down. "It was never a weakness," she said. "It was a challenge. And I don't lose to challenges." Khalil gave a faint smirk. "Call it what you like. Still, you evolved. Most people never do. You won't either. Unless you can build a viable way to fight back," Brielle Carter said, her voice steady but urgent. Lieutenant Rayan Thorne gave a dry, weary smirk. "There is no reversal. Once the neural pathways shift, it's permanent. But maybe your angle is right. Adapting might be the only path forward." That sliver of hope pushed Brielle into overdrive. She doubled down on her work, tweaking, testing, refining, while Echo Squadron's symptoms stabilized into something cruelly familiar. The tremors weren't going anywhere. They varied in how violent they were, but every soldier had them, and none of them could stop it. 5 days later, she entered the medical wing, clutching a small black case. Inside, a breakthrough. Echo Squadron was waiting, lined up in the recovery unit. Each member bore the mark of the neuroagent's damage, their fingers jittering, refusing rest. "These won't cure you," Brielle said, opening the case. Inside lay a set of adaptive combat enhancers, sleek and customized. "But they'll give you control, enough to operate at mission standard." She passed them out one by one. Each device was calibrated to the user's exact tremor pattern. Reed Morgan was the first to try. He locked his into a training weapon, took a breath, and steadied his stance. His hand still shook. But the shot, bullseye. Next came Thatcher Cole, then Logan Thatcher. One by one, they linked up their rigs. And one by one, accuracy returned. Not flawless, but reliable. The tech compensated for the spasms, restoring the edge they thought they'd lost for good. From the doorway came a commanding voice. "You're shipping to Virginia next week." Colonel Kestrel had arrived. His tone carried weight. "The Secretary of Defense has eyes on this unit. Adaptive tech for high-risk operatives is now a national initiative." A tense silence followed. Then Thatcher asked what they were all thinking. "So we're still cleared for deployment?" Kestrel's answer was immediate. "With this equipment, you meet every requirement. Echo Squadron stays active. But there's one change." He turned to Brielle. "Lieutenant Colonel Carter is now your embedded tech specialist. She'll deploy with you." At dawn, Brielle walked out to the range and found Sarah Nyla already firing downrange. Her stance shook. Her aim didn't. Each round struck its mark with mechanical consistency. Brielle watched. "How's the device holding up?" Sarah didn't lower her rifle. "It's odd, but it works." She paused, glancing at her hands. "You lived with this kind of shake for years?" "I had something to fight for," Brielle said softly. "Now you do too." 2 weeks later, Fort Arcadian's range was transformed. Targets set, brass polished, bleachers built. Top brass foreign allies, and analysts filled the viewing area, ready to witness something unprecedented. Vanguard Division had always stood apart, but today they made history. The world's first adaptive precision unit had just performed before an audience that included the Secretary of Defense, senior commanders, and dignitaries from allied nations. Cameras rolled, but what happened next couldn't be captured in statistics. The real spotlight belonged to Reed Morgan, the man whose service had nearly ended due to increasingly unsteady hands. Under normal conditions, he would have been grounded permanently. But today, standing tall under the weight of expectation, Reed inhaled deeply, aimed downrange, and did the impossible, extinguished a candle flame. From 2,000 meters, it didn't quite reach the legendary mark set earlier by Brielle Carter. But considering Reed's tremors, his shot became something much greater than just accuracy. It was redemption. 3 months ago, Reed told the hushed crowd, "I thought I was done." The tremors? They felt like a full stop. But this system, it didn't fix me. It adjusted with me. It made me operational again. Then came the final act. Brielle Carter, known to many in the unit as the one they doubted most, stepped to the firing line. Her hands were still shaky, just like always, but every movement spoke of hard-earned mastery. Before her, a single candle stood at 2,575 meters, the same challenge that had, months ago, shattered assumptions about what disabled really meant. She attached the upgraded interface, took her stance, and exhaled. The rifle's sound barely registered. But through the scope, officials watched with quiet awe as the flame blinked out, not a trace of damage, to the candle's body. Applause followed, but Brielle didn't soak it in. Her eyes drifted to the people who mattered. The unit who once smirked at her. Instability, and now stood behind her. Evolution. That evening, while deployment plans were finalized for the next mission out of Virginia, Brielle made her way to the fort. Arcadian Memorial Wall. Her steps slowed at one name etched in stone. Logan Thatcher. Her older brother. The loss that had first sent her down this path. She wasn't alone for long. Thatcher Cole, Logan's younger brother, approached quietly. His fingers twitched slightly, a shared symptom of the same condition that had once sidelined them both, and now united them in purpose. He'd get a kick out of this, Thatcher murmured. Losing him somehow led to a whole new way to fight. Brielle nodded. Not just fight. Start over. Give people like us a second shot. Now, as Vanguard Division prepared to ship out, Brielle looked around at the team they had become. Once written off, now redefining the battlefield. They weren't just surviving their limitations. They were turning them into weapons. What once looked like the end of a career was now the blueprint for future combat units. No more sidelines. No more shame. Just adaptability and unshakable resolve. Maybe you've met someone like her, someone who doesn't chase the spotlight, but changes everything quietly. The kind of person who rewrites the rules without ever needing a medal. For the Vanguard Division, that person is Lieutenant Colonel Brielle Carter, the woman whose trembling hands couldn't hold a glass steady, but who sniped out a flame at 2,575 meters with one controlled breath.